My name is Captain Jennifer Glossinger. I'm with the 350th Civil Affairs Command outside of Pensacola, Florida. I am a reservist. My background on the civilian side of the house is I have a master's in counseling. I've worked on clinical trials for pharmaceutical companies with antipsychotics and mood stabilizers in terms of bipolar and schizophrenia. I've also worked as a licensed professional counselor on an Indian reservation with Paiute and Shoshone Indians in Bishop, California. But more recently, I've been a pharmaceutical rep for the last 8 years. Most of my experiences, of course, are off of my deployment from 2008 and 2009 in Iraq. I think civil affairs is such a unique branch in so many ways, and approximately 95% of your civil affairs soldiers are Army reservists because of what they bring to the table in terms of their civilian skills. I think civil affairs brings a different component of warfighters in, and it's fighting for the people and helping the host nation become stronger and more able to stand on their feet. And we struggle with what that means. We struggle with not enforcing our belief structure on them, trying to figure out what it is. When we go downrange, we go down to help build infrastructure. We help with, water, sewage. We go help with developing governance, rule of law, economic stability, which all play a very, very key part in stability operations. Working with women in stability operations in the civil affairs capacity really made me realize how complex countries are, people are, relationships are, militaries, interagency. It also brought home the true fact of how important our job is as civil affairs officers in bringing stability. Once a country or a nation has experienced conflict and they're trying to put the pieces back together, when you look at what's left, the majority of the time, the majority of your population are going to be the women. And the women are looked upon to kind of bring things back together, bring their families back together and the culture back together. Women in MNDC or MND South in the 8 provinces in southern Iraq compose 55% of the population. Also, 80% of the employment came from agriculture, and 70% of that workforce were composed of women. I'm a business person, and I sold pharmaceutical drugs in my civilian life. I look at those numbers and I say, how can you ignore over half of your population? If I were to look at my manager and say, I really don't want to call on 55% of my population because of X, Y, and Z, I would probably lose my job and I'd be missing out on a great opportunity. Dealing with the women in these post-conflict areas, it's not just fluff stuff. It's stuff that's really important, and it's tied into our mission in terms of helping a country become more stable. The military is very structured and allows for very little flexibility, and yet I think that we really have to have some flexibility. I know with women's initiatives, I fear that women's initiatives has hit kind of a new high in terms of it's much more publicized now. I see female engagement teams coming on board. I see a lot more things trying to meet that need. My fear about that is that they're going to come up with a cookie-cutter way of dealing with people. That may or may not happen. However, the women in Iraq, in southern Iraq, are different from the women in Baghdad, who are different from the women up north in northern Iraq, who are different from the women in Afghanistan, who are different from the women in Ethiopia. And you have to be able to go in and do a business analysis of what works and go with what works and what makes your mission successful. People are really, really struggling with this whole concept of transition and what it looks like and the role that the government plays in terms of your military folks, your Department of State folks, your USAID folks, and we're all trying to really figure this out The people we partner ourselves with in country for stability operations know best. And we need to respect them, acknowledge them, and work beside them, and let them go ahead of us. You see that there are commonalities across all human beings, and we really have to face or focus on the things that we have in common as opposed to the things that we have different, the things that make us uncomfortable. So when I look at transitions, and what I walk away with is it's that reinforced feeling that there's not a packed answer for this, and that it's messy, it's gray, and there's an opportunity to change people's lives and to provide something better. PKSOI reinforces the ability for soldiers to mentor soldiers. PKSOI offered me the ability to write about, to research, and to reflect upon my deployment and what was right, what was wrong, what I would do differently as an officer, and provide feedback to those that are listening. That gave me personal satisfaction in terms of digesting what I had experienced, and also offering back to the Army hopefully something positive that will help change in a positive way. When it comes to the security of our country, stability is critical, and stability in other countries is critical. So as a soldier, I find that very compelling. So when we go over and we're doing transition operations, how do we make this work in a respectable way?